Hello, everyone. I'm Davidson. As we approach Father's Day, a day that's set aside to celebrate our dads and all that they do to provide, strengthen, and of course, protect the family unit, we must also look at the structure of the family unit and the ways racism in history has set limits, even damaged it, especially in our Black and Brown communities. But there is an organization here in Lexington that is on a mission, and it's one of educating, empowering, and supporting all of our fathers. Joining me now is David Cozart. He is with the Fatherhood Initiative. Welcome, David. It's always good to see you.
You as well, Sister Dia.
Let's get right started with what is it to be a father? I know what it is to be a mother, but I don't know what it is to be a father, and especially a father of color.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, being a father is a badge of honor. It is something that, contrary to some of the narratives that men that are fathers, they're very proud to be fathers. At times, proud to a fault, and I believe sometimes it's that pride that causes us or causes some fathers to be to be absent, because you want to be proud and you want to be fortified, you want to be strong, but if there are things going on that challenge that, some fathers think the better option is to be absent. But to be a father is to be a protector, to be a provider, to be one that instills wisdom in their children and supports the mothers of their children. Being a father is one of the most prestigious roles in this world, I believe.
And sometimes stressful and definitely expensive, right?
Both of those things for sure. Yeah.
But that's just kind of all part of it. So, what is the Fatherhood Initiative doing to support fathers, not just here in Lexington, but around our nation?
Yeah. So the field of fatherhood has been emerging in the last 2 decades, and most recently, we believe that it's getting some momentum, and folks are starting to believe across the nation that or understand that father presence just simply improves the life outcomes of children, families, and communities. And so there are programs locally and across the nation that are sharing and teaching those skills of being a father, that are providing those that refuge that even fathers and men need to deal with that stress that you mentioned. It's providing them a window to look into their own histories and their own family histories and lives to see what shaped you, and what things are you trying to unlearn from your fatherhood experience that may have not been as savory as we wanted. So a battery of educational programs, a battery of supportive services, the same sorts of things that mothers or others need, fathers can use as well to be the best fathers they can be. So that's what we do here, and we just try to disciple men and walk with men and encourage men and let them know that they got what it takes.
But sometimes men think that they're supposed to be macho and that they know how to do it. They don't need help. How do you bridge that gap to let them know it's okay to share, to emote, even cry is okay
Yeah.
for a man to do?
Yeah, so we're trying to undo some of those paradigms that every father's got to be that, that John Wayne, that strong all the time. Now, we do teach that, yes, you do have to have broad shoulders. Yes, sometimes the buck stops with you. And yes, you do have to be in a place where you can be relied upon to protect and to provide and to serve your family. But also, there's a nurturing piece that you need to be able to emote. There's a nurturing piece that you need to be able to share with your children and the mothers of your baby and your wife. It can't be calloused and dogged all the time. That it's okay for you to to hug and kiss your wife, or it's okay for you need to hug and kiss your children and tell them you love them, while also teaching them some of these, call it rites of passage sorts of things.
Talk about rites of passage, especially when we're raising our male children of color.
Yeah.
There are things that are similar, but then there are some things that are very, very different and what we perceive as life-saving. Talk to me about the talk.
Yeah. So that's something that is as standard in the African American family as it is in all families. To when you tell them look both ways when you cross the street, and don't jump on the bed, and brush your teeth before you go to bed, and say yes sir and no sir. That talk is as standard in our families. As it is, as those things are in all families. It is in preparation for our time, Dia. I always enjoy being with you and spending time and sharing with you. But in preparation, I started looking back at the history. And the list of young Black men and women, but predominantly young Black men that have been clearly unjustly targeted. Tamir Rice was a 14-year-old boy with a toy gun. We have, Tanisha Anderson that was in California then back in 14 that died of head injuries. A woman, mentally ill, by the way, with the mental, John in Cleveland, John Crawford in Cleveland, and Dante Hamilton, all of these, and then our most recent, that we know of, George Floyd and Aubrey and Breonna.
Rayshard.
And Rayshard most recently, down in Atlanta, running away.
Right.
I mean, hell, if you can't retreat and live, what can you do? And so we have to have the conversation, what you call the talk. We must. That's what's on this shirt. That's kind of the theme of the fatherhood event, that. And we must tell our young men, our children, how to be preemptive. You have to all the time be projecting the possibility of confrontation with authorities, and in some cases, just other ill-intended people. You have to avoid certain places at certain times. You have to avoid, unfortunately, you have to be selective even in your behavior when you're in mixed race crowds, because there are certain things and actions that they can do that are interpreted one way. You do the exact same thing and they're interpreted another way that causes intimidation because of the narrative that has been spun of you, particularly as a Black male. And either consciously or subconsciously, people react and overreact. And what we know is it results at times in death or trauma. Even if not dying, trauma. I'm seeing, we know now that there are more and more images being captured. That's just the age we're in. That's the First Amendment. You have the right. And you see children that are being detained in the streets just because they're in a group of 4 or more. Well, they didn't get killed. It could have been that. But there's also a trauma that goes with that. There's a dehumanization that goes with that. And so when we talk about avoiding those things.
But this is 2020, David. I mean, goodness gracious. This is the same talk that they had back in the 60s, back in the 40s, back in the 20s, back in the early 1900s. We're having the same talk that our grandparents and our great-grandparents and their parents had all those years ago. Why? What is it that keeps this cycle keep going?
Anything that's that deeply rooted has to be taken out by the root. You won't kill the fruit until you get the root, and the root is an institutionalized racism and institutionalized biases in our policies and our procedures. There is an institutionalized bias in our educational systems, in our media. And until those narratives and these constantly projected messages of that Black skin equals pathology automatically, until that narrative is changed, it's going to be a challenge. And there has to be an acknowledgement, a blanket acknowledgement that it exists. And listen, just by acknowledging it does not mean that you seek to perpetuate it. It actually is the converse. When I acknowledge that as a white or as a upper class or even as a Black or upper class, what if I acknowledge that there are some biases that are standard in this world, until you acknowledge that, it won't change, right? And so there has to be that acknowledgement first, I believe. There has to be relationship. You have to be intentional about coming to know me as a Black man and all my nuances and idiosyncrasies, right? And come to understand that I am no different than you in my wants and in my needs. And when you humanize people, you know, there's been a dehumanization that has occurred throughout history. In fact, many of the laws were made when African Americans were considered a percentage of a person. And that's dehumanization. And that gets internalized in both the oppressive culture and the oppressed. And so we have young people that devalue themselves because of the messages they receive. Hence, they act out in different ways. So it's not just a superficial response that's going to get it. It's going to have to be institutionalized and intentional, just like the pathology is institutionalized and intentional.
So where do we go from here? Do we defund the police department, or I'd rather call it restructure the police system?
Yeah.
Or is there something else?
Great question. Great question. So we must is one shirt, but I have another that is related to this that I'll be giving out. It's what now? So what now? And that's a question about related to exactly what you asked. So we know we have these flare-ups. And I remind people that this is a flare-up. It's not anything new, the things that people are protesting. It's not new. In fact, it's what I'm coming to call a perpetual progressive pandemic of racism. I mean, we're in a pandemic. It's a pandemic within a pandemic.
Right.
And so I'm asking folks that question, what now after we emote and after the emotions? And again, listen, those that are peacefully protesting, there's value to that. There has to be agitation sometimes agitation breeds motivation. Community organizers call it, they're tree shakers and jelly makers, right? And somebody got to shake the tree, get the fruit off, and then somebody's got to do that what now, that next step. So I believe that, first of all, we acknowledge the pain of those folks that are protesting across the world. Acknowledge that pain and let them know that it is justified. Even that rage there is a reason for the rage. I don't excuse vandalism or other things, but there is a reason for the rage, and you got to acknowledge that. But moving ahead, again, make it a point to form relationships with people. Reference the police specifically. I don't believe that there needs to be a blanket, absolute defunding in earnest of police. I do believe that there can be a redistribution of those funds that is more conducive to the formation of healthy neighborhoods and communities. And I think if some of those resources, human resources and financial resources in different municipalities across this nation are put into how we educate our public servants, how we educate our children, how we're educating our teachers. If some of those resources go towards agents throughout governments and throughout public service agencies, these agents that are exclusively there to identify those explicit and implicit biases and prejudice that are popping up within the agency or within the agency's policies and strategic plans. That someone has to go to sleep and wake up thinking about, I want to be the sergeant of arms of sorts, or the racism barometer in these things that we're forming. How is that going to impact? Is that counterintuitive to citizens' safety and well-being and dignity and respect? And it's okay if someone calls that out, because that's making a better and more effective system for all of us. I think also the what now, we have to realize that when we address this issue, we're not just addressing it on behalf of African Americans and Black communities only. It's universally beneficial to address the issue. And I think some people think, okay, Black Lives Matter, okay, yeah, but what about others? And all lives do matter, but it's this one that has experienced the most heinous and ongoing challenge throughout the history of this country. And so when you make the life better for this population and demographic, it inadvertently it is inextricably tied to the well-being of our whole community. And so we have to get out of our mind that, yeah, we're just helping one population. No, we're helping everybody. It's improving the human condition in earnest.
So what you want for Father's Day?
You know what? I'm a tough customer because I'm cool. I just want to be with my family. I want me and my wife to be cool. I want me and my kids to be cool. I want to be able to, I really would like to be able to relax that day. It's been busy working with some of the efforts to address the issues that you're talking about. I'm in the throes of writing a federal fatherhood grant, be in prayer for that. That would help us continue doing what we're doing here. And also for, getting ready for an event, our annual Father's Day event. So I am a little tired,
Right.
And so I just like to chill out. That'd be good enough for me, be around the ones I love.
That's what Raymond said too, my husband said too. So we'll have to figure out something else, even if it's no more than a pair of slippers and a card, right?
Yeah, that'll do. It makes me feel a little old when my kids bring me a pair of slippers, but that's cool.
But that's,
that's pieced into that dark night. I've got me a pair of reading glasses, so.
Well, when we get to that age, we gotta have them, right? But that's a gift.
Check it out. Even worse, I got a pair, and I got them for $1 from the Dollar Tree. That's what my wife recommended. And I lost my first pair, and I went and got another pair.
Uh-huh.
I went and sat down, and I found the first pair. So.
But then now you have two. You can put it in two separate places.
Yeah, I'll end up with about 5 probably.
Yeah. My dad used to have a table full of them. Bless his heart. But your event that's happening Saturday, let everybody know about it.
Yeah, a little different than in times past. So we're being respectful of all CDC recommendations, and we're being conscious of people's health and safety. We usually have a prayer breakfast where over 100 men from 25 different congregations gather. We're not doing that. We will be airing a virtual prayer breakfast Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. It'll be on Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo. We're encouraging everybody to tune into that. 4 very profound pastors here in town: Pastor Richard Gaines of Consolidated, Pastor Ray Green from Emmanuel Baptist Church, Pastor Joseph Owens, Dr. Joseph Owens from Shiloh, and a brother named David Thomas, who used to be the pastor at Centenary and now is at Asbury. Even just that picture in these times, 2 white brothers, 2 black brothers, 4 very wise people, We want to show that picture even in that. So that's the virtual prayer breakfast. It'll air from 9 to 10, and it'll be out there on the waves thereafter. Then from 10 to 1 o'clock at Douglas Park, our normal spot up in West End, we're having a daddy drive-through. We're calling it daddy drive-through. So we're going to have 4 or 5 tents, and we're going to have our tables, and we've got t-shirts that we'll give everybody, the fathers that come through. So help me with that. The fathers that will come through with their families will get a t-shirt. And our normal educational resource fair, where we have housing resources and educational literacy resources and other resources for families, will be in a bag. They're sanitized, will be in a bag. We've got PPE that we'll give to everybody in that bag. Pretty neat. We used some neighborhood folks that had some skills, and they took our old t-shirts, hadn't been worn, but some extra t-shirts we had from previous events, and they made masks out of them. And so those PPE will be in there, and in the bag, we'll hand that to them, and we'll send them on their way and encourage them to go put on their t-shirt and do a virtual walk, because we generally have a march, and put on their t-shirt and walk with their families in their neighborhoods respectively, and post them to the Gram and Snap, Facebook and things. So virtual prayer breakfast, daddy drive-through from 10 to 1 at Douglas Park. Chief Weathers and the mayor and folks are supposed to come through and greet some people some and be in the community, and then the virtual walk. And then we just tell folks to go enjoy their Father's Day weekend.
Without a doubt. David, thank you. Happy Father's Day to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks for all you do. Tell Ray I said, what's up?
I will. And let your wife do that haircut for you. It'll be all right. I promise. Take care. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. We good?
We're good. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care.
And thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. We'll have much more of them next week, so be sure to stay tuned.